Welcome to another edition of Interruptions. I'm your host, Otis Smith. I got another treat for you. Guy I always wanted to talk to, a guy I watched. He's been on many shows. He's done film. He's been on Bold and the Beautiful. He's been Days of Our Lives, Guiding Light. This man has also been on Exposed, Wild West Chronicles. It had the iconic, and I do mean iconic, uh, on Guiding Light as the character Lou Jack, Mr. Vincent Irizarry. Is it Irizarry?
Irizarry.
Irizarry.
It's
Okay.
Irizarry.
Irizarry. Yeah, I was watching a interview you did, and I heard people pronounce it two different ways. So
Well, yeah, it's Irizarry, and I mean, I'm sure that you never have to go through that, Otis, since your name is Otis Smith. Not that complicated. People don't ever mess up your name. Do they ever say Otis Smythe or
no?
anything
You'll be surprised because I'm from Atlanta.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
I have that southern.
Yeah, people add letters to my name all the time. They're like Vincent Irizarry, and I'm like, there's no O, there's no this and it's that. So
I've been called Elvis. I've been called Elvis.
Who you call what?
Elvis.
Elvis?
Yeah,
because of Otis?
Right, because I'm from the South, so I have that southern drawn. And so sometimes people, or elder, people think I'm saying elder, and I'm like, no. Oh. So you know what I had to do, Vincent? I had to say, I'm Otis, Otis. I have to spell
it. That's pretty funny. That's pretty funny. I wouldn't think that a name like Otis Smith could be messed up, but I don't. But I guess I shouldn't be surprised. You know,
the times we're living in.
Yes, yeah. There you go.
So let me. My first question for you: how did you get into acting? Because I saw you're a trained pianist, and so you started in music. So how did you segue to getting into acting?
I started playing piano at about 11, 12 years old. So I was studying classical piano at that time. And I went to Berklee College of Music in Boston, and it was there that I became good friends with an English teacher there, who was a post-beat poet. I was writing poetry, so I was sharing poetry with him, and we became good friends with a group of the other students, a bunch of us. And he had a theater company in Boston, and he asked me if I ever thought about acting. And it was one of those things that I always loved movies, grew up loving movies, used to watch movies with my older brother all the time. We'd be up till 4 o'clock in the morning watching The Late Late Show, and Jimmy Cagney and Cary Grant and all these actors and great old movies. And I always had a natural sort of curiosity about the art of acting and of theater and performance and that kind of performance. And so he invited me to audition for a role that was a really powerful role and very emotional, heavy, intense role in a Jean Genet play called Death Watch.
Okay.
And it was a one-act play, and I got it, and I just fell in love with the process of bringing life to the words and putting flesh and bones on a character, and studying the pathology of the character. It was like, for me, it was kind of like an epiphany, something that I was like, wow, I really love this. This was exciting. And to do live performances of it also. I can honestly tell you, the first time I did a performance, I was very nervous. It was like, look at myself in the mirror in the dressing room, getting ready, getting makeup put on, and look at myself and say, how the hell did I get here? Why am I It's like an audience out there waiting. And I was very kind of shy and withdrawn at the time socially, because I was studying piano so much, like 5-6 hours a day in a room the size of me and a piano at Berklee, these little practice rooms. So I was really this opened me up. It was, cathartic for me emotionally to be on stage and have a breakdown like this character had. And it just really did open me up, and I just fell in love with it. And I started doing more auditions around Boston at the time, doing other theater. And in my second year, I decided to withdraw from music college and pursue acting, which I knew was a gamble, but it was something that I really had a heart to do. And I moved to New York and started doing off Broadway there pretty much right away. And I was living at the 13th Street Theater in the dressing room, sleeping on the floor every night there for about 5-6 months. because I was focusing entirely on acting. That's all I wanted to do. And so and as a trade-off for me living there, I was running lights
Okay.
for some shows and stuff. That's basically it. Yeah, that's how it started.
Well, you you used an interesting word a second ago when you talked about the you was intrigued by the pathology
Yeah,
of a character, and a lot of time as a
yeah,
fan, we don't understand the we think you guys, all right, you just do the lines, try to give some
yeah,
emotion, but you also have to get into the psyche of the character.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, you have to understand the motivations of the character, what drives them, what their needs are, their wants,
Right.
what obstacles are there before them, and accomplishing what they're going for. I mean, that's why it's great when you have characters like on All My Children, Dr. David Hayward. You
Right.
know, it really helps to have a great backstory for a character. And he had one. He had a great backstory, and they developed it along the way. Especially because I did go to the executive producer at the time, Gina Dario Burke, and also Angela Shapiro was head of daytime at ABC. And I was encouraging them to bring somebody else on the show because that
Okay.
would know my character and his history and his past. Because at the beginning, David Hayward didn't really have any connection with anybody in Pine Valley except for one person, the woman Allie, who was played by Ala Kura, Allie Doyle. And so I felt that the audience needed to know why he was the way that he was. He was so manipulative, and he was, he had nefarious deeds, and setting people up and doing all this stuff to try to get Allie back, and and almost ruining another person's medical career. The audience not knowing why he was that person, after a while, they'll become a bit tiresome. So they brought
Correct.
on Marge Doucet, and she was brilliant as my mother. And they created a whole backstory about my father committing suicide when I was 11 years old. And I thought we were a very happy, loving family. But I came to realize that my mother was cheating on my father, and that my mother encouraged my father to take his life while I was outside the door and watched him put a gun in his mouth. And I ran in as an 11-year-old boy and held him in my arms where he bled out. And that was, for me, gave the audience an understanding of why, talking about pathology, it's like
Right. Why
why
he
he
wants
was
to be in
that
control.
person. And yes, and also that he became a world-renowned cardiologist surgeon, that every time he saved somebody, he was fighting death. It was like for him, it was another success in almost bringing back his father. That's what it was.
And
So,
we do that in real life. And
oh,
so
sure.
look, I didn't even have this as a question, but since we are already there, what
Okay.
do you find? Because I do. Do you find the soaps do a better job of fleshing out characters than like if you're in the movies? Because a lot of times, like you said, you a character can come on, they could be
Yeah,
sinister or whatever, but you have time to peel back the layers of a
absolutely.
character to understand. And I notice nobody does it as good as the soaps. They're real good at fleshing out the character for you to really have some meat of the person that you're playing.
I agree with that in this regard, that we have we're doing 5 shows a week. I don't know how many weeks a year we're doing it now. I don't know if it's like 40 or something like that, but we're
Mm-hmm.
doing 5 shows a week, 1 hour shows typically, except for Bold and Beautiful, a half an hour show. And it's pretty you have the ability to be very create very complex characters, because you can go into detail about everything about those characters, and to develop those characters. And I love that about that. I'm sorry, it's buzzing.
You're fine.
Let me
You're
let
fine.
me let me put it on do not disturb. I meant to do that. No more disturbances. So you do have that. You have the ability to really develop a character. And when you first come on a show, you just have the beginning, and you hopefully
Right.
have that backstory that I just spoke of, and because that really does propel you forward with the characters. But as you're working on the character, you and the writers and the directors and the production, you're all developing it together, and you're putting more and more layers on that character, on that person. Because there's no way for me to know when I first started as David Hayward or even as Lou Jack what the journey was going to be for that character a year from then, 2 years from then. So that it's exciting in that regard, and I would say that nighttime television also has that. I mean, they don't have as many episodes,
right?
But I think nighttime television has far surpassed motion pictures as being able to really get down into get gritty with the characters and develop the characters in that way. Because a movie, if it's a 2-hour movie, you have a beginning, middle, and an end, and everything has to come together within that 2 hours, sometimes an hour and a half. Everything has to come together. And you can certainly have complex characters, and there are many brilliant performances throughout film history. But the difference is that with daytime and with nighttime television, you really go from episode to episode to episode, and you're just adding more and more layers upon those characters. And that's exciting for me. But it almost feels like you're an automaton. You're kind of like a robot, and then they put another chip in the back of your head in your subcranial area, and now it's all of a sudden you come to find out, oh, I had a brother I didn't know I had. Is that kind of a thing?
You played your own
for that,
like you played your own twin.
Yeah, like when I was on Young and the Restless, all of a sudden I was told, oh, you have a gambling addiction. You didn't know that when you first won the show for the first year. You have a gambling addiction, and you're stealing from everybody, and you marry Nikki because you're gonna try and steal her money, and then my character also try to have her killed so I can inherit the money. So it's like things like that. I always play these fun, crazy, not so nice people sometimes.
I've always sat back at home, right, and I know it's different from you because you're in the throes of the job, right? But
sure.
I've sat back. I said, man, he's Nikki. Then I'm like Kim Zimmerman. God, man, it was some beautiful women, man.
Yeah, no, we definitely.
That's a good job. That's a good job.
There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. Some beautiful women on soaps, without question. And I really did. When I came on as Lou Jack, I didn't feel like I fit the mold of a soap-looking actor. There's no such thing as a soap actor, but a soap-looking actor. Because most of the actors at the time when I first went on there, they were like really chiseled, good-looking guys. And they got muscles, and I could think of one person. I felt like he had wall-to-wall muscles on his forehead and chest and everything, and I was like this scrawny. As the prototypical starving actor. I truly weighed at that time 140 pounds when I first started as Lou Jack.
Oh, wow.
I weigh 190 today. Okay, so there's a difference. I was 50 pounds lighter when I started as Lou Jack, and if you see the old pictures of me, I really look very thin. So I did look like the prototypical starving actor. And I did. I always felt. I've said this many times, but you look at those pictures, and I look like I'm hair with a nose. That's it. But it was a great opportunity. It was the first TV job I ever had. I never worked in television before. I only did 6 years of theater before that. So it was very exciting, and it was a totally different experience, especially with the fans. I had never had anything like that. I'd done theater in New York, and then all of a sudden I'm doing a TV show, and people are coming up to me on the streets, and people are outside my apartment building where I was living in New York City. I was actually living in a rooming house when I first started in New York and on Guiding Light. And people were outside my building because I was in the telephone book. And so they saw my address, and they'd be like yelling up Lou Jack from outside on the street at 2:00 in the morning. So it was a totally different experience, very different.
You used a word I hadn't heard in a long time, phone book.
Phone book, I know. I was in the white pages. That's what you'd work. And that's when I realized that I couldn't be listed. I couldn't be listed anymore in the phone book because people knew my number. I was getting messages on my phone machine every day from people all over the country when I was Lou Jack. People were calling, leaving me messages, and actually a few of them from jail calling as well. So it was kind of crazy. Totally different world that I had entered into that I wasn't fully prepared for, frankly.
What was the when you first started going to auditions, were they difficult for you? Like you said, first getting into acting and then trying to learn how to audition, or what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, it's a different animal. It's a technique, absolutely. And when I first started in Boston, I guess I felt pretty much that I could get this role, because when I was auditioning for something in Boston, I was up against maybe 6 people, 7 people, and I go, well, the odds are good. I should be able to get this, and I would normally get it. But when I came to New York, it was a totally, totally different experience, and it shook me the first audition I went to.
Okay.
And I've shared this before, so for the viewers that are listening to this, but it's in the context of what you asked. I got the audition out of a backstage, okay, which was a trade paper at the time.
Okay.
It's still active, actually. It's online now. But I got it on backstage, and it was for an industrial film, okay, it's basically a film for a corporation that's going to use it for a form of advertising for them.
All right.
And the character was listed as 18 to 21, handsome, shy, but courageous. Okay. So I thought, okay, well, handsome's subjective. That's, they'll decide that, but I can certainly be, I was 18 to 21. I was 20 at the time. And I was like, well, I could be shy, but courageous, So I went to this audition feeling like I was going to one in Boston. I was excited. I got on the subway, got out of the subway, walked to the street where the audition was, and the street was blocked off. And I turn the corner and I see this like 150 people on the street. And they all are 18 to 21, handsome, shy, but courageous. Okay. I'm going, I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm standing in this line for like an hour to get in there. And I'm like getting more and more nervous. Every second I'm going, this is not anything like I've ever experienced. And it was a terrible audition. I was not focused. I was shook from the whole thing. That's for sure.
Okay.
And it hit me, and I was like, going, okay, well, this is the big leagues. Now I got to like really step it up. I got to be prepared. And that's when I started doing theater around 13th Street Theater. I was living there, and
okay.
And I got into a professional acting class at Lee Strasberg Institute, and I got a full scholarship there, and was studying with Lee Strasberg and with his wife Anna, and with a wonderful teacher, Elaine Aiken. She was fantastic. And Geraldine Barron. I studied with them. And then I was also a finalist at the Actors Studio for 2 years, 2 different finals that I got pushed to the finals. And as a result, I was also able to go and audit classes at the Actors Studio and do scenes with members. And I did do that for 2 years. So, yeah.
That's a real thing. That's a real thing. You mentioned talking about far as sometimes you can get unfocused because you're looking at how many other people going up for the same part you are.
Sure.
And if you don't stay focused and stay, let me give my best foot forward. Sure. Like you said, you could get shook like, oh, well, maybe he's more handsome, or maybe he looks more shy and ready. You could kind of up everyone else and diminish yourself, and then not go in with any confidence.
Yeah, and it's interesting. They're definitely, like I said, auditioning is its own animal. It really is. And it's a technique that you have to get your head into the right place. And every time you walk into a room, it's different now, because I haven't done an audition in person since Wild West Chronicles was the last one. And that was a callback. The first audition I had was a Zoom audition, okay? Because it was during COVID. Right. And then I felt comfortable coming in and reading with them there. And I said, yeah, so that was the first one, but I felt really solid with that. I felt solid with the Zoom audition and went there. But there are definitely when you had in-person ones, you never knew what kind of room you were walking into. Every room was different, okay? Because sometimes you walk in a room, it's just a casting director and a reader, and you're being put on tape for somebody. Sometimes you walk into a room and it's like 15 people there. It's like the casting agent, casting associate, the assistant to the associate, and the producer, and the director, and everything. And and sometimes you get a vibe when you walk in a room, and you don't want to let that affect your performance, but you get a vibe. Like sometimes you walk in and you could tell immediately that they're not that interested. That's not a great feeling to feel when you first walk in an audition. And other times they're very welcoming and they're great. But regardless of what it is, my responsibility is to leave it there in the room, to bring the performance and do it and put it there, and walk out and know that I've done everything I could for that role, and it's out of my hands. And I had to learn, that was another thing I had to learn when I first started working as an actor. I was getting so close to a lot of really good roles. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I even auditioned for Francis Ford Coppola for The Outsiders, and
Okay.
that was an amazing audition. It was like an 8-hour audition in a dance studio on a Saturday morning into the afternoon, with Francis Ford Coppola, Fred Roos, his producer, Francis's son, videotaping everybody that was auditioning. And I
Okay.
was in this room with about 20 other actors. Actors like Tom Cruise was in there, and Emilio,
Oh,
was it? I think Emilio Estevez was there.
oh wow.
Patrick Swayze was there. Matt Dillon was there.
Oh wow.
Thomas C. Paul, and just all these. They were all there. I was told from my agent, "You're going to be there all day." He likes to do improvisations with everybody and work the cast to do it.
Okay.
And I was like, sure, sounds great. I'd love it. So it was awesome. And I had really great auditions for it. But I had a strange thing happen to me at the end of it. I got pulled aside by Fred Roos, and he says, Fred Roos is the executive producer who produced The Godfather, produced a lot of movies with him. And
Okay.
he said to me, he says, he really loves your work, but he's not going to be able to use you. I said, why not? And he said, because you look too much like Vincent Spano. And I didn't know who Vincent Spano was at the time. I said, who is that? And he goes, well, he just used him in the Black Stallion Returns. He was the lead in that. I'm like, okay. I said, well, I mean, I could try to look different. He says, yeah. He said, it's just not going to work. I was like, okay. So I left. But at that time, back to what I was saying, is that I had to learn how to accept those things.
Right.
In the beginning as an actor, I was getting close to so many roles, and there were times it was between me and one other person for a Broadway show or one other person for a film, and I didn't get it. And it was like either I was too old, too young, too tall, too short, too ethnic, or not. Those things are variables I have no control over. But I would
Right.
like beat myself up for a few days. I would. It was like I'd get kind of self-destructive and get crazy, about drinking and nuts. And then it hit me. I'm like, you know what? I can't do that. That can't be my ethic. I have to I allow myself one day to mourn the loss of the role that I was excited, and you could almost taste, that you
Right.
feel like I'm going to get this. And then the next day it's move on. It's past, it's
Go
behind me.
go for the
And I
next
had
one.
to do that. And the irony is that then years later, I'm talking probably 8 years later, my
Okay.
agent gets a call from Fred Roos that he wants me to come in and read for him for a possible cast member on Godfather 3. Wow. It's like, I
Okay.
couldn't believe he remembered me, but I was shocked. And I was like, yeah. And he wanted me to do a scene from Danny in the Deep Blue Sea. I said, okay, sure. I went into his office, read for him. He loved the audition. He says, definitely, I want you to come and see Francis again. I met with Francis at, I think it was it wasn't Warner Brothers. It was Fox, the Fox studio here in a trailer that he was in. And I met with him, and we were talking for about 10, 15, 20 minutes, actually. It was longer. And I was speaking in Italian because it's going to be done in Sicily, and it was supposed to be Al
Okay.
Pacino's son, the opera singer. So I started studying the opera, and I fell in love with opera. To this day, I love it because of that. And we had such a great meeting. And at the end, when Francis, I'm sorry, but I can't use you. I said, why? And he goes, because you look too much like Andy Garcia, and Andy's in the movie. And I think people are going to be confused, like having to think. I'm like, are you serious? Is this really happening again? I couldn't believe it. I was stunned. I was
Wow.
stunned. I'm like going, oh my gosh. Now I look like Andy Garcia. I used to look like Vincent Spano, and
Right.
who's next? I mean, I'm like, what the hell? So anyway, but that was just a fun story that happened there. I mean, and it just had to accept it. It is what it is.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's stuff that's out of your control. You can't control
Right.
that. You
I
look.
can't control the
You
fact that
you
I
can
look
only
like Andy
look how
Garcia at
you
that
look.
time.
You can only look
Yeah,
how you look.
that's right. That's right. And I mean, it's not the worst thing that somebody said that you look like Andy Garcia. He's a pretty good looking guy. Mm-hmm.
What do
So, an
you?
amazing actor, an amazing actor. I have great respect for his talent.
Oh yeah, most definitely. What do you remember about when you were playing Lou Jack and you was in the throes of that role? Excuse me. What do you remember how it catapulted your not only your career but
Yeah.
just things around you personally starts to happen?
Well, it really was foundational for my entire career since. It's been almost 40 years. It was 1983, in November of 1983, when I started that. So it was 38 years ago, almost to the day. And it changed everything, especially for daytime. Every role that I've had in daytime since, and I'm talking about 5 other shows,
Right.
were offered to me. And it was because of the impression that character created in that
Right.
medium, and the following that I had as Lou Jack. I mean,
Right.
it did change my life, frankly. And I loved that. I loved the character Lou Jack. I loved playing him. I loved playing opposite the people I got a chance to play opposite. Certainly Judy Evans, especially, and Beverly McKinsey, especially. But all of them, I enjoyed the character immensely. And it literally segued from that to other roles. Like the next one was Santa Barbara, and that was offered to me right after I left the show. Mary Ellis Bunham, who was one of the producers on Santa Barbara, came up to me. I left the show in 85, in December of 85. And I came out to LA. First, I treated myself to a trip to Paris the day after I finished.
Okay.
I went to Paris by myself and went and visited a friend there, and went to Florence. That was like 2 weeks away. Then I came back and I went to LA, and Harley Kozak, who's an actress on Guiding Light at the time, she started, well, not at the time, she left Guiding Light and she was working on Santa Barbara, and she invited me to go to the Santa Barbara, their first holiday party, and it was at the a Playboy Mansion, and I was like, oh, sure, it's an LA experience. I'm going to go to the Playboy Mansion, and it was for a Santa Barbara holiday party. So I went with her, and Mary Ellis Bunham came up to me. I was still airing, I think, on Guiding Light at the time, and she came up to me, and she said, "If you ever want to come back on the soap, please let me know. I would love to have you on Santa Barbara." I was like, wow, that's really sweet. Thank you. But at the time, I left Guiding Light because I felt it was time for me to take chances. I was offered a very lucrative contract for 1 more year to do Lou Jack, and I turned it down. My agent thought it was crazy. They literally were going to pay me more than 3 times what I was being paid. Because that was my first TV job. I was the low budget actor on the show. I had no TV credits, so I was basically getting scale for every performance.
Yeah.
So they offered that to me, and I turned it down because I felt like at the time I was 25. And I thought, this is the time in my life I should be taking chances. I didn't have a family. I didn't have children. I felt this is, if I need to survive, I could be a bartender. I could do this, but just go out to LA and try and get some work. So when she offered me that, I didn't take it right away. I didn't reach out to her. It was for like 2 years, because the first year I was actually working quite a bit. I did a movie called Firefighter with Nancy McKeon. It was a movie of the week. They used to call them MOWs. We don't really have them anymore. Yeah. And I went right from that into Heartbreak Ridge with Clint Eastwood. Then after that, I did right away, I did an episode guest starring on LA Law. And then I did right after that, I did a Joseph Wambach miniseries called Echoes in the Darkness, where I played opposite Treat Williams and Robert Loggia and Gary Cole. And it was a great cast. It was a really powerful, heavy story, really heavy story. So that was my first year. I was working and getting good episodic work as well. But after 2 years, I really missed the consistency of working on a character in a soap, and knowing that every day, every week you got work, because in between those jobs, you could go for a couple of months and not get a job, Right. So I missed it. So I had my manager, Doug Warner, my agent at the time, he's my manager still to this day. I had Doug Warner, I had him contact Mary Ellis Bunham, and she said, Vincent remembers you said this was like 2 years later. And he was just exploring this as a possibility. We're not sure if we're going to do this right now. She goes, I'll be back to you by the end of the day. She contacted us immediately at the end of the day without even a character yet. She said, this is what we're offering him. And it was basically matching what I was being offered for the 1 year on Guiding Light. And she said, we'll definitely offer him, we'll find a character for him. And we would like him to start like in the next month and a half. If that's okay, we'll write somebody in. And we decided to go that route, So that's basically what happened.
That's so amazing of you, that the acting job you've done, because we knew you from guiding light, right, from that character, Lil
Right.
Jack.
Yeah.
But you were playing the roles in other soaps so good. We were just, oh yeah, yeah, he used to be
Right.
Lil Jack versus, you know what I mean?
Right.
You weren't
Yeah.
typecast, and you just answered the question
No.
because I was going to ask you, like, how did you pull that off to maneuver to different soaps? You know, maneuver it because yes, you left because you know sometimes you can leave an impression, and sometimes
Right.
that can be to your own detrimental because they only see you as that character. But
True.
you were able to morph into other characters, and we just said, okay, he used to play so and so, but we didn't hold you to just being that.
Yeah, I would say that really it comes down to what I said earlier. It comes down to backstory, who the character is, and that's the foundation that I start with and work from that and personalize that as much as I can. Every character is different, so I should be different in those characters. I mean, and it was the same thing. Like David Hayward was a perfect example, and I would say that David was the first character that rivaled, for me, my excitement as Lujak. And the great thing about David was that he lasted 13, 14 years before the show went off the air, and it was an amazing character. I loved playing it, and it was one of those things. Again, I was offered the role, and it was supposed to be 3 months. It turned into 13, 14 years. So I was grateful for that. Yeah, and I loved developing that character. That character was so multi-dimensional, multifaceted. And just he had his issues, that's for sure. He was like he had a God complex, but he was humbled numerous times throughout the time I was on the show, and rightfully so. But I loved playing David. He was a fantastic character, really exciting to play. So that's basically how it is. It really just come down to the backstory. And even like when I started on Days of Our Lives, that one, that was a similar type of thing. The backstory was so solid. It was so great that I loved sinking my teeth into that creatively and getting excited about going and working on these scripts. And it really was a very special character, Deimos Kyriakis, with the backstory they had, made it really special. And I got to work with John Aniston, which the guy was just fantastic. Loved working with him. I feel very fortunate. I've had so many wonderful, wonderful veteran actors that I had the opportunity to work with throughout my career.
You work with some legends.
I mean, whether it's like in daytime with like Susan Lucci and David Canary, and you had so many people, James Mitchell and Eileen Hurley,
Eric
Braden, and work with Eric, and working with John Addison, as I said. There's so many wonderful, wonderful actors that I had, and some of them are no longer here anymore. Like John, James, David,
Susan, on Bowling the Beautiful, played the matriarch.
right, yeah. No, I didn't work with her though, but yeah, I know who you're talking about. I didn't get to work.
I'm just saying when you said some that have
but I know like getting to work with like Angela Lansbury or Clint Eastwood. I mean, that was pretty amazing to get to work with. That was probably the best summer job I ever had. To work for 7 weeks with Clint Eastwood at Camp Pendleton, and then also on the island of Vieques in Puerto Rico. That was a pretty freaking great summer job. That was great.
You know what? One of the best things I saw, before I ask my next question, but when they brought you back to play like a twin Lujak, like you didn't know that you existed. But I'm gonna tell you why that was so great. Because when you look at like a Bowling the Beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And they change regions. They change the character, and it's like a lot of times
when you do that,
when you do that, it's kind of like it's like I can't even watch it now. I can't even watch it now.
Well, I think everybody understands on the production side of it that it's going to take a little time for the audience to be able to,
because he was the first,
fully accept, embrace him. I mean, certainly Ron Moss was on for so many years, and so identifiable, and still is. But Torsten is a fantastic actor. He really is. He's solid. And
he's a good actor.
He brought, and the great thing that Torsten, he didn't fall into the trap of trying to be the same person
No,
that Ron
that's not
created.
gonna work. Right.
He 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 created his own character, and I think that's obviously the right way to go. You're not going to be able to replicate the other actor. You're not going to be able to do that. It's not a biopic, So the character should come from who you are. And Torsten did a fantastic job with that. And he's a solid actor,
I
So
think
it's
what they
exciting always.
I think what they helped him with too is they evolved the character. So
Yeah,
he didn't have to try to play it the same way as
right.
the first actor. So I think
Yeah,
that helps as well. Um,
yeah.
what has become the most important thing for you now?
I'm sorry. Say that again.
What has become the most important thing to you now from when you started, in the industry from stage to TV to film, and
Yeah.
as your life has evolved, what's now become, like the most important thing to you?
I say more than anything, my family, without question. And the people in my life that are important to me. Those that that are there for me, that I'm there for them. It's human connection. It's relationships. Really, it comes down to more than anything. Um, those are the ones that
Gotcha.
stay with you at the end. And as far as my family, we're very close, very tight knit. I have 5 brothers and sisters. My parents, thank God, are both still here with us. And so that I would have to say, without question, that is the most important. My children, to see my children all growing, and our 2 granddaughters, and I have another one on the way, a grandchild on the way. I
All
don't know
right.
what yet. So yeah, I mean, that's interesting to see that experience, this journey of my own, and
Right.
even from the first day that I had a child, from my first baby bringing home, it changed my whole worldview from that second. All of a sudden, it wasn't all about me anymore. It was about this child, this baby, and it really did. It caused me to see the world in a very different way. And till this day, still to this day, I feel that way. And I'm very grateful for that, because it's given me a life fully lived in that regard. I love all of my family members very much. And the people in my life, friends, dear friends, my girlfriend and Yvonne. It's like people in your life that help you to grow your life and give
Sure.
you a feeling of a foundation to stand solidly on because of those relationships. And I'm grateful for that, very much so.
Just 2 more questions.
Sure.
You started off in music, morphed
Yeah.
into acting,
Yeah.
but what does music do for you?
I love music, and I love, people ask me what's my favorite style of music. I guess because of having my roots as a musician, all music. I love all different styles, and I have Sirius XM in my car, and I bounce around from one thing to the next. I've really gotten into country music over the last few years. My girlfriend at the time asked me if we could change the channel sometimes. I just like it because for me, it's such good feeling music. And there are times, we all have moments of stress in our lives where we go through difficult times, periods. And the things that I'm very grateful for is living in California is one thing that I really am happy about, because even on a stressful day, normally it's beautiful sunshine. I could drive along the coast, the sun, and it lifts your spirits, And the same thing with music. Music can do that too for me. So I have that playing in the background, and it sort of lifts my spirits, help me to distance myself from whatever anxieties that might be affecting me that day. But I love all different styles of music. And there are times I go into this, I can go into jazz, phase for a bit. I can go into opera for a bit, or classical. So that's music has been sort of like another best friend for me throughout my life. And I'm grateful for that too.
It's funny you mentioned that, because that's my quiet time as far as I want to, think, plan, or whatever. It's jazz.
Yeah.
It's jazz for me. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's just it's nice. I have, like I said, I have the XM radio, and I'll go to this station and just let them cover me in their sounds. It's beautiful. It's nice.
My final question for you is, how have you been able in the industry you're in to keep your sanity?
um, I would say that there have definitely been breaking points. There have definitely been moments in this business. People have asked me, if they're young actors, I'm like, I'm thinking about getting into acting. And I'm like, well, it's got to be something that you cannot not do. It has to be, because that's the only thing that you're so compelled to do it. It's the
Okay.
only thing that's going to help you through the peaks and valleys and the rejections that you're going to experience, because you do. I mean, for every role that you get, you may have lost out on 50. It's not that simple. Um, and I mean, certainly some people's careers take off right away and things
Sure.
change for them right away, but that's not the majority of the actors, okay, in the business.
Right.
So again, relationships, people in my life, keeping myself productive, doing things. I'm a realtor as well, and that's what I do, and I love it. I love when I'm able to find somebody a new home for themselves. I help them to move on and turn a page in their lives, or to leave a house and do the same, and making it as stressless as possible
Sure.
for them, because it's very stressful going through the sale or purchase of a home. So I do my best in making that happen for them and making that dream a reality. Um, so that's exciting. I love, like I said, getting together with good friends and dear friends, and just socializing, because life is about socialization. Socializing with people.
Right.
We're not we're not individuals by ourselves all the time. That's not the way that you should live your life. So that's what I do. I'm very much involved with others and friends and dear friends, and get together with them occasionally, and and I'm there for them as they are for me. So that helps me with my sanity and my family. Again, people have asked me who your heroes in your life. I would say my family, without question. They've been there for me during very difficult times, and I'm very grateful for them, each and every one of them. So yeah.
And just to give you some context, the reason I asked that question is I felt when I looked you up and I saw that you were also a realtor, right? I
Yes.
said, "This is a man that's not defined by what he does." And you mentioned it earlier when I asked you how did you get into acting, and you talked about when you said you left Guiding Light. You said, "Okay, take some risks." And you said, well, I could bartend. I could. That's a
Sure.
person. That's a person that's not trapped into the
Right.
illusion of everything. It's like I can do this, but if I can't stay doing this, I go over here and do this. And
I mean,
it's like you already knew who Vincent is. Excuse me. You had a good knowledge of who you are as a person, knowing
right.
that, yeah, I love acting, love doing it, I can do it, but I'm not going to sit around and just wait on it 24/7 and drive
No,
myself crazy
no.
if this doesn't. I can go over here and do that and find something fulfilling. So
Right.
I salute you on that. I appreciate that.
Well,
Go ahead.
I like I said, it's very important to always stay productive. To do, if it's not what you really want to be doing at that time, but you're not able to be doing it at that time, then find something else that you can invest your energies in, because there's a creativity to that as well. you know and that's what I do with my life. I do whatever I need to. I've got responsibilities. We have to get on with our lives and do things. So I'm excited always when I get a job, as an actor.
Right.
I have another episode coming out on Wild West Chronicles soon. I don't know, they haven't given us an air date yet, but I
Sure.
filmed that just about 2 months ago. And I'm actually on hold for another guest starring role right now that just auditioned for it just the other day. And they contacted my agents and said, they gave me the dates. Is he available? And so I'm on hold. They call it pinning. They pinned me for this role. It was a great role. It's a fun role. It's actually a comedy. I had a lot of fun doing it. It was a lot of fun, but we'll see. I don't know if that's going to happen. And if it is, then like I said, I give myself one day to mourn it. It's time to move on. That's life,
Well, hey,
so,
I'll be praying
fun.
that you get it. I love
Thank
to
you.
have you back. Thank you for coming on the show. Love to have
Sure.
you back with your buddy Scott. I love to bring you
Yeah,
back,
that's
have
great.
you and Scott on together, you know,
That's a
and
sweetheart. Good
and
man.
talk some things. Yeah, good guy. He's a good guy.
I've known Scott since Blue Jack. I mean, we both were on. He was on As the World Turns at the time.
He played
Scott
another.
Bryce,
He played
and I
iconic
was.
characters.
Yeah, yeah. So I've known him. I haven't seen Scott in many years. It's probably been over 10 years, most likely. But when I saw that you had interviewed him, it was great to see his face. He's a sweetheart. Good man. Good man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know,
Oh, that's why I'm happy that we're able to make this happen. I'm sorry for the audience there. He's been reaching out to me for months now. And I kept saying,
all
yeah,
right.
it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And finally it was like he did recently. I said, okay, now it has to happen. So I thank you for your patience. And I had a great time. It was fun. It's a little scary looking at my face over your head the whole time.
I tell you
especially
what,
with that
I tell you what,
ah,
since that one was a young one, let me get you a more up to date one.
okay, yeah, there you go. It's a little closer to now, and I'm a little more subdued. It's a little intense. So anyway, but thank you. All right, man.
Thank you for coming on the show, man. Bless you. Stay safe.
All right.
Be blessed,
Thanks,
man.
and
We'll
blessings
have
to
you
you.
later. Bye bye.
Yeah. All right.